In medical practice, when we're treating cancer, we have three main groups of specialties. So I'm a surgeon, then we have radiation oncologists and medical oncologists. And what tends to happen is that we all become very focused on our own area. So I know which type of cancers will benefit from surgery and what type of surgery and the implications of all that, and that's my focus, and I just become more and more expert in that area. And that's what I read and that's what I talk about in the meetings I go to. The radiation oncologist will do the same for radiotherapy, and the medical oncologist will do the same with regard to the treatments they give. Things like nutrition, unfortunately, don't necessarily get as much attention as they should. And when I say things like nutrition, the other things that can be really helpful in terms of lifestyle are exercise and sunshine, vitamin D. Doctors tend to think, well, there is no evidence. All we can do is say, have a balanced diet, look after yourself, be sensible, and really, that's the key, everything in moderation. But then you get a trial result like that, and they say, well, actually, the diet did seem to make a difference. And a significant difference, you know. So this is written by a physician, a medically qualified doctor from America. And what he explains in the book is that when he was in the Philippines, he noticed that certain people had a higher rate of liver cancer. And when he looked at the diets, what surprised him was it was the more affluent people that were getting this type of cancer. And when he looked at the things that may influence that, the main thing was that they could afford to eat more meat. And that made him think a bit about that. And he went on to look at animal protein and how it might affect cancer, and he studied casein, which is in milk, and he gave that to animals with cancer, and he saw that, you know, it was a bad thing in terms of cancer, and that he gave them vegetables, then they did better. And then the book, the China study, is named after the fact that he then looked at rural Chinese women and why they have a lower rate of cancer than American women, and what diet differences there were, and how it affected estrogen levels and breast cancer rates. So after I started reading these books, I then looked at more and more books, and I must have read 20 or so popular books that you'll find selling on the internet and in bookshops about this subject. And many of the authors have no qualifications except that they had an idea that they thought was a good one, and you find that there may be no evidence for the advice that they're giving. And I went to a few seminars from people on speaking circuits as well. You know, there was one chap here who came and said that you could tell what food was good for which organs because of the shape of it. So, you know, a tomato it's sort of got red and it's got some chambers and it's good for your heart, and an avocado is the shape of a uterus, so it's good for that, and so on, you know. So the first thing we do is we look at epidemiology. So we look at population groups, and you see that this population has a higher rate of a certain cancer than this one. Why might that be the case? So we then find that in this area, for example, they drink a lot of green tea. Do they have less cancer than these ones that don't drink much? These ones live in an area where the soil is rich in selenium. How does that compare to the ones who live in an area which has a different concentration of selenium? Can we take 1,000 people who develop breast cancer from a community and match them with 1,000 who didn't, and then look at their diets and say, well, how much garlic did these ones eat and how much did these ones eat? So these are population-based studies that give us some clues. Now, they don't prove things because this is an association. So then we go and we say, okay, well, this would seem to be an association. What else can we do? So then we can say, well, we think that we've recognised a food group that reduces cancer, so we're going to try that in animal studies. I've tried to find the plant chemicals that have got the most information about them, that have been the most studied, and listed those out as things that people might want to try to prevent cancer or improve their life. Nearly every food, it's interesting, nearly every food, I think, will have, if they were all studied, some anti-cancer properties. And I think there's a principle at play here, and that is that plants are exposed to destructive environmental forces through being exposed to sunlight and photosynthesis, and that's why plants have antioxidants in them, right? Because they have oxidation processes going on that can damage their own DNA and their own cells. And so the plants have to have a lot of antioxidants to counter that. And they have other plant chemicals that also counteract abnormal processes in cells, damage to DNA and so forth. So when we eat that, we get the same benefit from it. So if you study pawpaw, and I can't name it for you, but pawpaw has been shown to have phytochemicals that have anti-cancer action in the laboratory, that's for sure. And I've had people who've said they take a pawpaw skin and they wipe it on their skin lesions every day and they go away. But I mean, I haven't tested it, I can't tell you whether that's effective or not, and same with pawpaw tea. So when I say that foods have good things in them, that's before we meddle with them. Yeah. And most foods we meddle with. So if you were to eat sugar cane, maybe it'd have other good stuff in it. But when we purify it down to white granules and eat, have 10 of them in a drink of Coke, 10 spoonfuls of it, that's not a natural way to eat sugar cane, is it? And the same with refined white flour. There's a scan for cancer called a PET scan. Some of you will have heard of this. So FDG PET stands for fluorodeoxyglucose PET scan. So what happens is a labelled glucose is injected into the person, and we see where in the body it goes. And cancer cells have a higher demand for sugar than other cells, and so the glucose is taken up preferentially into cancer cells. And so then when we do the scan, we see spots on the scan. This is where the cancer is, and it's because that's where the sugar's gone. So you can then say, well, okay, eating sugar is feeding cancer, I'm not going to have any. The problem is that we have glucose in our blood the whole time. We have to. And that's why we have insulin, and people who are insulin resistant or can't make enough of it are diabetic. Their blood sugar is higher than it should be. And if you have too much insulin, then your blood sugar is lower than it should be. There's a range that we want it to be at so that our brain functions, and so that our cells can metabolize and produce energy. So we need a certain amount of sugar. You can't really influence that too much. I would think it's sensible not to have too much added sugar to things. What they tend to do is visit people and say, all right, you're having chemotherapy, you feel sick, you've got a sore mouth, we've got to try and keep your calories up during chemo, because so people end up eating more than they should of things they shouldn't eat, and they put on weight, and obesity is a risk factor, I'm afraid. And they focus on this, keeping your calories up and so on while you're on chemo. And I think they should be saying, well, look at your diet overall. Are you eating enough plant foods? Are you not eating enough unprocessed things? Are you preparing these things in a way that doesn't damage the anti-cancer chemicals in them? And in the PA hospital, for example, we have vending machines. You know what's in vending machines? It's all chocolate bars and chips and sugary drinks.
Have that matter as well. And the cancer care board.
Well, why do they have it? I mean, it's crazy. They should be saying to people, You see, because every time when you're hungry, you eat that, you're not only having something that might be making things worse, you're also missing out on something that might be making it better. It's starting, and I think around the country there are some other groups starting that call themselves Integrative Cancer Centres.
Yes.
So I would like to know what they're doing, because we need to be more collaborative.
Yeah.
The problem is a lot of people feel that they need to compete. One of the other doctors who made me think more about this was a surgeon called Chris O'Brien in Sydney, and I knew Chris. He died from brain cancer. But when he was going through treatment and so forth, and you see, he was like the rest of us. He'd been treating cancer, neck cancer, for years with surgery, and you just feel like you're doing your best, and that other people in the health team must be addressing other factors. And then when you get personally involved, you suddenly realise, hang on, why isn't someone doing this, and why isn't someone doing this, and who's the expert on that, and where's the information on such and such? And you realise there's all these holes in place.
Oh, yes.
But you see, I think what Chris wanted to set up, and he had a picture of him shaking Mr. Rudd's hand in the media and so forth. I think he wanted a centre like the one you just described, but I think it's been a little bit watered down. I don't know for sure, don't quote me on that, but I'm not quite sure that what he had in mind has really happened, because he felt strongly that these lifestyle changes were effective. Well, I think it has to be a normal thing that you can integrate. But also, what I'm saying too is it has to be sustainable. Because cancer is a chronic disease. It lasts a long time. It's usually slow to change in terms of it's not hours, it's not like bleeding, it's not like an infection. It takes a long time, so we need to use things that we can apply over a long period of time. And the beauty of food is that we have it every day. So and these are things which you are going to eat for general nutrition anyway. You may as well have something in it that also has some anti-cancer benefits, and that's going to be from ordinary food. All of these have had, if you like, active ingredients identified. It might be it's helping the body's natural system for removing cells that have got abnormalities. That's another way we get rid of cancer. It might be that it blocks growth signals that go from cell to cell and stops cancer growing. It might be that they block the potential of a cancer cell to break through a layer and to spread. So all different mechanisms, anti-cancer chemicals with particular ways of working have been identified for all of these, and you can look it up. And the crucifers, so crucifer vegetables, so this includes cauliflower and Brussels sprouts. There's a whole list of what we call crucifer vegetables, but broccoli seems to be the one that's studied the most, and it's got a couple of different chemicals in it that work very well. The thing about it is that it shouldn't be overcooked. And often with these, there's a little element of preparation that you just need to know. Broccoli shouldn't be overcooked. If you're preparing it, it should just be steamed for a few minutes, or you could dump it in boiling water just quickly in an ounce sort of thing. So it is heated and softened slightly, but don't overcook it because it damages the enzyme within the broccoli that converts the necessary chemical to its active form. Berries, so everyone is familiar with blueberries having great antioxidant potential. So antioxidation is another anti-cancer property. So you know, you've heard about free radicals, how we have free radicals in our body from metabolic processes, and if these are allowed to be around too much, they can damage DNA and risk cancer and prevent repair of damaged cells. Turmeric. Anyone use turmeric in cooking at all?
Yes.
So it's commonly used in curry. You can have it as a dry spice, which is what most people have, but if you buy it fresh, it looks a little bit like a ginger root, except when you cut it, it's very orange. And you can have it like that as well and grate it, for example. Now, turmeric's got a huge number of anti-cancer properties, but it's not absorbed very well, and to improve absorption, you can have it with black pepper. So black pepper improves the absorption of turmeric by 1,000 times. Now, garlic is another one that has a particular preparation that you need to know about. So like broccoli, it has an enzyme in it that needs to activate the chemistry, and that takes time. So the interesting thing about some of these plants, these two for example, is that in the natural plant, if the plant was damaged, so if it was crushed or broken or chewed, then that's what breaks the cell wall of the plant, allows the natural enzymes in the plant to come in contact with the chemistry of it and to set in place the protective mechanism. So that's why broccoli, we've got to chew it well to get the don't overcook it and then chew it well to get the enzyme working. Same with garlic, you chop it or crush it, and then you've got to leave it for 10 or 15 minutes. So we don't normally do that, do we? You crush it and in the pan it goes. But if it gets cooked or eaten before that time is up, you don't get the activation of the anti-cancer chemistry. So chop or crush your garlic, do some other preparation, and then come back after 10 minutes and throw it in the pan. What they have found is that if you put boiling water onto it and allow it to steep for longer, more of the effective chemicals come out into the water. If you use less heated water, 60 or 70 degrees, and you drink it sooner, you won't get as much of that. But the green tea connoisseurs, that's how they drink it. They've not such hot water, and you drink it sooner because you have more of a subtle flavour. But in actual fact, with plant foods, it seems to be the more bitter ones and the less convenient to eat have more goodness in them. So berries, for example, tend to have the goodness in the seeds and the skin, and those that so amongst all the berries, the ones with the strongest anti-cancer chemistry are black raspberries. And if you get black raspberries that have got a tougher skin and are more seedy, they're the best ones. But you see, our Western world, we like to have things that are soft and juicy and sweet, and that's got less of the real nutrition. Grind them yourself, don't leave them sitting around because they go rancid. Right? Selenium you get from Brazil nuts, but it depends where they come from. This is one thing where I think a supplement is useful, but there's a particular supplement that's better than others, and I mentioned that in the book. Carrots and tomatoes have got specific things in them, carotenoids and lycopene that work well. Carrots are okay whether you cook them or have them raw, but tomatoes are better if they're cooked. Probiotics, so this is for gut bacteria, and if you can just have yogurt, so it's got to be natural yogurt, but you can make sauerkraut and kimchi and other things like this if you're interested. But we're coming back to the thing of you don't want to burden yourself with chores. You've got so many chores to do all day that you can't persist with this, too much hard work. So you want to make it simple, but if you're going to buy these things from the shop, you don't want to get some that haven't got the right bacteria count or have been sterilised. Yeah, so iodine, you get in, seafood is the main thing, seaweed is best. better than fish and so on. So you can, if you eat sushi, you get that seaweed, or you can buy the squares of it dried and you can grind it up and put it into stews or whatever.